I want to welcome you to the Launch podcast, and we're going to do one of the ones that I kind of do as a little bit of a monologue. Usually we try and do dialogue as well. We've got lots of great guests that have been on the program. I've been away a little bit. Well, it's been getting ahead of summer, and I tend to, I don't have August off. Some people do, or I keep working all the way through August, but July I spent a little bit of time away and had some family stuff. My son was really, really ill, taken away while he was on holiday. He was taken really ill. I had to fly out and go and see if I could help him. So it's been a bit of a time, and the world's struggling, isn't it? There's all kinds of things that keep happening, and the world at times, I think, is looking like a real mess. And I don't know about you, but there's times I've kind of thought, what on earth is happening to the world? Not in some cynical way, not angry so much as just honest. And just yesterday I just sat and watched the news, and again I was like, oh my goodness, this just doesn't feel great at all. And every day there seems to be another crisis, another conflict, or another tragedy, another mess, another headline that makes you wonder whether things are getting better or whether somehow they're just kind of slowly unraveling. And again, then we, as Christians, I tend to go, Maranatha, come Lord Jesus, because it certainly can't seem to get much worse than this, and we need you to come back. But at the same time, while we're waiting for him to come back, in the meantime, I feel a bit exhausted at times. And, you have things going on in your life and your family, and I have them too as well, that, they just leave you drained with all of the other things that we have to do, especially as leaders. People don't stop drawing on you, even if it feels like your bucket's kind of really not got much left in it and your soul feels a bit exhausted. There's still the demands that don't go away from that. And they themselves are anxious about the future, and that can be projected onto you and me. There's parents worry about the children, the worlds that are growing up in, so much so that I'm reading that lots of people are deciding not to have children these days because they don't know what the kind of world it's going to be. The media just feed fear all the time. There's so much, that if it bleeds, it leads. And so there's an awful lot of fear that, in every way that keeps people on high alert and stressed out. And, other church leaders that I talk to tell me that their people just seem more, I suppose the word is fragile, perhaps, than ever before. And this isn't just about one particular generation. I think it's across the generations. Business leaders talk about uncertainty. Politicians try and give us some, but really all they'll say is, let me be really clear. And then they're not. Teachers describe anxiety among children like they've never seen before. We can go right back to COVID and beyond that, but it's actually before that, I believe. I think that these recent years have been like a wave that's been building, and mental health professionals continually warn us that loneliness and isolation and depression rates and anxiety are some of the defining challenges of our age. It's like we've become experts at supposedly being connected through technology, but we've forgotten how to connect to our own hearts and how to be able to connect with other people too. That's one of the reasons I just decided a while ago to just come off social media. I've started doing a Substack instead, and Delaney, you can find that one, but that's to me less about a social media thing. It's more another opportunity for me to creatively express some of the thoughts that I've got, and also to read other people's. It seems to me a bit more of a medium. So I encourage you to go on Substack and maybe start your own. But if you like, follow my posts on there as well as my blog at anthonydelaney.com, which again, I've not done one for a bit, but I'm going to the next couple of weeks start to upload some more thoughts on my blog, because there's thousands of people around the world that are reading that, and I'm really encouraged that it is something that people are getting something from, and that's what fuels me, is to be able to serve in those different ways here in my local church at Ivy, to serve well as one of the leaders here, but also to make the most of every opportunity, because the world needs us as Christians to be the kind of people who say, I don't know if I've been given one talent or two or five, that's really not for me to assess, but what it is for me to do is to make the most of every opportunity and to not bury a single talent God's given me in the ground. And that's what's going to take me soon to some other nations. I'm going to be getting out to Nigeria, the biggest thing I've ever done, through a friend called Michael Orokpo. I'll soon be going out there, speaking in the National Stadium in Abuja, speaking to 4,500 leaders maybe in the mornings, and then they're opening up to 60,000 people coming in the evenings, and we're going to be meeting people out there. The pastor, one of the people I share a platform with there, he has a church in Abuja that is the largest church in the city that seats 100,000 people. Can't even get my mind around that. It's incredible. And again, God is able to make an impact, and he still is. And as I travel around, I do see signs of hope from different nations and people of different nationalities coming into England as well, coming with faith and coming to our shores with, teaching us to pray, teaching us to fast, all these different cultures that we shouldn't be afraid of. We can learn so much from different churches, different leaders. At the same time, people are still asking the questions about, so where's the world heading? Can I actually have confidence about the future? And if we haven't got any confidence, how are we going to lead people into the future? If we haven't got any hope, what are we in this business for? Because I think we're supposed to be trading in hope. Really, that's what we're supposed to be purveyors of. And so I've been thinking about that word hope a lot recently. This year is Ivy's year of restoration. You probably, if you've been listening or watching, realize that already. And we've talked about how God wants to, first of all, restore our hearts, then restore the home and the house of God, and then to restore hope for us. And we said that hope isn't just sort of blind optimism. It's not wishful thinking. It's Christian hope is real hope, because there's a difference. It's tied to something. It's tied to somebody. The Hebrew word for hope is also the same word as for rope or for cord. And then in Hebrews, it says that we have this hope, Jesus, as an anchor for the soul. So optimism is saying, well, I hope things will work out, or maybe, no, I believe things will probably work out. But hope says, even if it doesn't work out the way I expect it, I know the one who holds the future, and I'm holding on to him. And that's so different. That's not the same things. That's just what the world needs right now, I think. And over the past little while, I've been reading a couple of books that weren't really intended to go together, but in my mind, they created a kind of bit of a conversation that's got me thinking, about hope. And one of them is this one. It's called Hope. It's called Jesus and the Powers, by Tom Wright and Michael Bird. Everybody's heard of Tom Wright. I hadn't heard of Michael Bird before, but I've started to read it. I'm really encouraged by it. And the other one's by a guy called Phil Pringle, and it's just called Hope, and written some years ago. And this one really looks at that looks at the idea of hope in the Bible and tells some stories about it. But this one is really practical too, to explore Jesus's kingship in a fractured world with all these empires that are fighting against each other and rising. What about the kingdom? What about Jesus is king? And as I've been reading them alongside my Bible and praying into this season, and also as we as a church are looking at the book of the Ruth in what we're calling our Summer of Hope. And if you go to ivychurch.org, you'll be able to listen to various talks around that. And we're looking to come along to one of our services, and you'll see we're looking at the book of Ruth. These things have tied together in my thinking, and I've realized we don't just have a crisis of politics or economics or technology. More than anything, we have a crisis of hope. That's our deficit right now in the world. And that's a bad issue. That's a deeper issue, because everybody in every civilization lives on hope. I remember Gavin Calver coming recently from the EA, and he said that he'd turned across at some parliamentary dinner at the previous Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and said to him, you need to start talking about hope, because as you remember, his style was really, whatever you want to say, I'm not getting into the politics of it, but Keir Starmer was not, I think anybody's going to say he was a purveyor of hope. I don't think he really even knew how to talk about hope. And I'm not just talking about his tone of voice, I'm talking about his choice of words. And when he first came in, it was like, I'm going to set everybody's expectations really, really low. When people were already feeling that they'd had a kicking, when people are already feeling that they needed direction and they needed somebody to be able to point to, Winston Churchill's sunlit uplands at some point in the future, was what was needed, because everybody needs hope. Need hope. You need hope. Businesses need hope. Every family needs hope. Every single person needs hope. Every church needs hope. Every marriage needs hope. Hope is what gets you out of bed. Hope is what gets you going to find a job. Hope is what gets you starting a business. Hope is what keeps you employing some people. Hope, therefore, is good for everything in the economy. And a lack of that is horrendous. Hope is what keeps people in education and striving for to better themselves. And so often what we've tried to do instead is just, as people's hope has got lower, we say, well, we just want to support you in that. But it's not supporting people to just keep them in crutches for the rest of their life. If they could walk, if they can move again, and sometimes we have to say painful and do painful things to be able to get that. I remember years ago, I busted my knee. I was doing this like ultra marathon stupidity in my early 20s and twisted my knee. And before long, I woke up from a hospital bed and my knee was like massive and it was in a pot. And then they took it out of that and they put it in a brace. And then I had to go to physio, and that was horrible. And it was horribly painful. I'm so glad that I did it rather than just saying, oh, there, you've got some crutches, now you're going to walk on them. No, it was, you're going to have these crutches for the next 2 weeks, then we're taking them off you. You can walk again. You can run again. In the future, you'll be able to do it. And now I run a park run every Saturday. I run for fun in my 60s. We need to give hope for the future. I'm so glad somebody came in and didn't say to me, because you've busted your knee and had this operation under general anaesthetic, that's you done. Don't ever run again. If I'd heard that, I might not have done. To be honest with you, knowing me, I probably would have done anyway. But hope fuels our future. On the contrary to that, Proverbs says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. When somebody robs your hope, they rob your future. Hope is like oxygen for the soul and for the spirit. And you don't spend much time thinking about hope until the day you realize you haven't got much left of it. And here's the irony. Objectively speaking, we have all kinds of reasons to celebrate and to have hope in modern life. We again, it's not going to make the papers, but we've got this power through technology, through computing, that's helping with medicine, that's giving us ideas on through the positive stuff of AI. It might not kill us all and take over the world. It actually might help us to come up with some better solutions to some of the problems that we need faster than we can right now. And yeah, we don't have to be led by it, but we can learn with it and we can teach it to learn to help us better. So we get more advances and we get more scientific advances and we can travel better and we can look after the economy and the ecology better. And we can have not just knowledge, but wisdom for how to live and all of those things that our grandparents could never have imagined are now available to us and the next generations that are coming up who are even so much better at being able to use those things than we are. And yet, despite all of that, again, do you feel like people have got much hope as you talk to them? Why is it that antidepressant prescriptions are pretty much the number one thing that is being prescribed right now? And the UK is leading the way in antidepressants. That's not to be down on anybody. It's just to say there's things that we can do. And yes, there's clinical depression that can be helped, but some of us, actually, what we don't need something that's going to come just with a tablet. We need something that's going to come through community, because loneliness, again, and isolation is such a significant issue. One thing we're doing here at Ivy is looking at how we can try and do more. If you look at Ladybridge Connect, you'll see that's one of our projects where we're trying to do more in our communities that help more people in our communities too. A value for us at launch comes right out of the high impact church, which my friend Chip Ingram taught. Is that high impact churches are those that make disciples, multiply leaders, and meet some of the deepest needs where people are and where God has put us. And again, I hear about young people so anxious about the future, so traumatized. We're looking at working with friends who are trauma experts to be able to counsel young people well, to be able to help to recover from trauma. We've got so many ways that we can actually make a difference, which is set up to be able to be this incredible body that makes a difference in all these different areas. But that's if we move forward in faith. I was so struck in the World Cup, England, and the way they ended up going out again this year, when we should have been moving forward, when we just scored a goal and we were winning because we were in their half more than they were in our half. But instead of that, what did we say? Let's do it. Let's take off the attackers and put on more defenders. Let's try and defend that win. And the problem is the enemy is relentless, and he keeps on attacking one way and another way and another way skillfully, because he's got a lot of experience. I'm not talking about Messi here. I'm talking about the enemy and the way he wants to messy us up. And he's going to try every tactic and keep on going, and he's going to win. He's going to score goals against us. And we're not here to defend wins. We're not here to live out of faith, out of fear, but out of faith. You can't do much if you're living in fear about the economy, fear about politics, or fear about war and AI and what might happen with the climate, and fear about our children. It's not saying we shouldn't be concerned about these things. I'm saying that we shouldn't be fearful about those things, because God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. People are fearful about just about everything. And how could a generation with more information than ever before sometimes feel so much less secure than those who came before us, who had so much less? And I'm old enough to remember the 70s, the 80s, and the fear about Russia again. But this time it was like nuclear bomb, impending disaster. And if the bomb drops, what you've got to do is go and hide under a table and maybe put newspaper up at the windows and see. People had no clue what to do. But we'd lived with this fear in the background, but now it seems fear so much in the foreground for everybody. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe we need to put hope in the foreground. A generation ago, many people believed, actually, after that time with Russia, as somebody living in the UK, we started to believe that humanity maybe was moving towards a completely different era. As we went through the 80s and into the 90s, optimism became more and more the atmosphere. The Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall fell. I remember when that happened. It was amazing. And the Soviet Union collapsed and apartheid ended and Nelson Mandela walked out, and the internet started to open up new possibilities of connection, and global trade was increasing. And there was ups and downs, but the trajectory, was people started to say, the people who were the thinkers, the philosophers, influential, was genuinely believing that some of the greatest ideological battles of history were largely over, because we'd seen that actually communism doesn't work, that it actually enslaves people, like Animal Farm describes. We'd seen that your totalitarianism doesn't work and dictatorships don't work, and nations have started to come together. They say we've learned the lessons of history, and then they were feeling like in some ways, we've reached the destination, that from here we're going to move into a much better future. Humanity's finally worked it out. Science has got the answer. We're going to keep on advancing into the future. All this technology is going to unite us and make it easier. We'll just fly around in silver suits all the time on little hover pods, and we'll just eat a tablet that will keep you full all day and have all your nutrients, if stuff like this. Education is just going to reduce prejudice and eradicate racism, and democracy will spread to everybody, and the globalization will keep on increasing, and that can only bring more and more prosperity for everybody, because nobody's greedy and wants to keep it to themselves, do they? The future, they were telling us, looked remarkably bright. I remember being at theological college, and at the end of that, after coming out of that, it was Francis Fukuyama was talking about the end of history. It was like that was finished, and now we had a bright future to look forward to. It's an extraordinary moment of confidence. Things can only get better. That's what the song was, if you like. And then history reminded us that the world's September 11th, wars that followed, the global financial crisis, the refugee crisis of people moving from poverty into places where they can see now life's so much better over there. So why would I stay here? And of course, there's wars that is displacing people, and there's yes. But to be honest with you, I'd probably get in a boat if I was in poverty and I could see on my screen that people over there are living a much better life, and I want a better life for my family. I would do that too. We're all human, and at the same time, we have the rise of extreme Islamism, terrorism. There's kind of right wing, left wing, there's hate, there's nobody in the middle ground anymore. You've got to be on one side or the other, shouting across at the other people. As a result of that, there's the return of major wars in Europe. Again, that we thought surely we were done with that. And then there's, conflict around the Middle East just keeps on igniting and reigniting, and false promises keep exploding, and political polarization. I mean, in America right now, there's Democrats and Republicans who just want the other side to not even exist, let alone talk together. Social media just fuels all of this hatred and hopelessness. And artificial intelligence gives you more of what fuels your prejudices very often, because it itself is something that we are making into something that will again control us, maybe more than that we can control. And it's creating opportunities that we couldn't have imagined, but at the same time, it's giving questions that nobody really knows any answers to. And none of this, it means the future, again, is so unpredictable. And as a result of that, confidence starts to evaporate. Now, please don't misunderstand me if you've come on here and you're driving your car and think, right, I need to find a cliff and drive off it. Please do that. I'm not saying the world is only getting worse just because I quoted that song about things can only get better. History isn't that simple either way. And there's been enormous progress and things that we thank God for and we're celebrating. Right now, people are generally living longer. I'm grateful for all the advances in healthcare, breakthroughs in medically. Extreme poverty has been reduced in so many parts of the world. The gospel keeps on advancing in remarkable ways. I've been talking to friends from Wycliffe and Bible translators, talking about the way in which the word of God is getting out to so many nations that it's not been reached with before. God's on the move. But alongside genuine progress, there's still this growing uncertainty, and that's the paradox of this generation. And we've got more, but often we feel less. We've got more technology, but we've got less peace. We've got more communication, but we have less conversations because we're on our devices. We've got more entertainment, but my goodness, it's boring so much, and we end up spending the evenings looking for something that's kind of worth our time. Whereas maybe pick up a book, I don't know, pick up a Bible, God speak to you rather than Netflix. And I'm saying this to me too, because we're getting pulled into these things that give us less joy, but promise us more possessions, but at the same time, we get more debt, we get less contentment, we get less real friends, even though might have more followers, because that's what we're after, and more likes, but less love, less wisdom, as I said, and all this increasing knowledge and information. This leaves us with less certainty because we've got more choices, but more choices don't mean that I'm going to be able to even make a choice. I'm more overwhelmed because there's less hope at the bottom of it all. And as I was thinking about all of this and praying about it, I found myself asking another question, which is, what if we're just looking for hope all the wrong places, in places that we were never designed to provide it and actually won't be able to provide us with hope? Because every generation is looking for hope. Everybody's looking for hope. Everything is looking for something that will save us. Some people think it's going to be education, and I'm thankful for teachers, people who invest their lives in education. But education can't save us, whoever the education secretary is. Others believe that politics would solve humanity's problem. Well, good luck with that. Even though I'm from Manchester and they just had Andy Burnham, etc., as Prime Minister, my hope is not in Andy Burnham. I pray for him. I pray that God uses him, and that he does seem at least to be trying to speak with more hope and to be able to generate that more in the country, which I think can only be a bad thing and a good thing. And in the end, that's what people really need right now. So, praying for him for that he'll not become cynical and get wound down by the civil servants or whoever else surrounds him, but he'll keep on believing we really can make a difference. Other people trusted economics, that somehow, we've been through cycles and it's been bad, but it'll just get better. Or other people think there's another scientific answer that's coming down the pipe and that will solve our problems, or military strength is our hope for the future, or an innovation is our hope, or there's a breakthrough that's just about to come, another invention, and the next policy that comes to us this week, or another discovery, and everything will then be all right. But if we take the long view, history shows us that isn't the case. Every generation demonstrates and one day discovers that we hope and pray for human progress, but no human can save us. Maybe various things can improve our lives, but nobody but Jesus can forgive sins. He's God. Medicine can extend our lives, but God is our healer and he's our hope. AI can't tell us why we exist. Science can't explain the why to that question either. It can give us some good questions about what's and how's, but none of that, no law that anybody can make can restrain the evil in the world, because it can't actually change the human heart. As Paul said, we tend to actually rebel against laws. We can't live by law. We need grace. Economics can create wealth, but it can't change greed, and it can't create meaning for consumers. Education can increase knowledge, but it isn't going to produce any wisdom. These things are gifts of God, and they're wonderful things, but they're not God, and they make terrible gods if we make any of them our God. And maybe that's where the Christian story that we are incredibly privileged to be able to live out and tell makes such a difference, because the Bible never asks us to put our hope in civilization. It never says one day history is going to gradually sort itself out, or this leader's going to come, or that leader's going to come. In fact, watch out for leaders who come saying that they're the hope, unless they've been in a grave and rose again to prove that they really are. History doesn't say if only the right people are in power. It doesn't say if science just gets a little bit better, or no. Instead, we just in this series, we've been looking at God's book. Dr. Andrew Ollerton is going to be speaking at launch with us this year. He looked at some of the biggest questions Christians ask, and again, you can look at our take on that on ivychurch.org. But what we saw from there is that from Genesis to Revelation is like bookends, and all the way through all of the ups and downs that we're now living in, Scripture keeps directing our attention, not to a program, not to a philosophy, not to a political situation, but to a king. And I want to suggest that that's what changes everything. Because if your hope rests in circumstances, your hope will rise and fall with today's and tomorrow's headlines. But if your hope rests in the one who reigns over history and is still at work today, and is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he gets the final say, as our friends say and sing in many parts of the world. Actually, that's where I want to go next time in our in this podcast series, if you check on any of the ones about hope, because I don't want us just to become more informed people. Would you pray for me, and I'll pray for you, that we'll be more hopeful, full of hope, filled people, because that's what the world needs more than anything else right now. And again, just having more information, more input doesn't mean that we'll have more hope. So please join me again on the Launch podcast, where we're going to look at that. And would you like it, subscribe it, share it with other people? Who do you know right now who's maybe looking for hope in all the wrong places? Maybe who do you know who you can encourage today that God's not done, and he's not done with us yet. He's still working, and he's going to keep on working in our lives for our good and for his glory, no matter what. Thanks for listening to the Launch podcast with me, Anthony Delaney.